After everything you have been through, you are still here. Not because it was easy, not because you always felt strong, but because something held you together when everything around you felt like it was falling apart. There were moments that should have taken you down, moments that should have broken your spirit, your strength, your will to keep going. And yet, you are still standing. You remember those moments, the weight you carried when no one else could see it, the nights that felt longer than they should, the silence that followed you when you needed answers the most. You kept moving, but inside, something felt like it was slowly wearing down. And there were times you wondered if you would ever feel like yourself again. You did not always feel strong. You did not always feel faithful. There were moments when your thoughts were louder than your belief. Moments when doubt crept in and tried to convince you that this was the end, that nothing would change, that you had reached your limit. And still, you did not collapse. Think about that. You were pushed to a place you never expected to reach, and somehow you are still here, breathing, moving, continuing. That is not something small. That is not something to ignore. That is evidence that something greater was working even when you could not see it. Because if it depended only on you, there were moments you would have stopped. If it depended only on your strength, there were times you would have let go. But you did not. And that means there was something more holding you than your own ability to endure. You may not have understood it then. You may not even fully understand it now. But there was protection in places you did not recognize. There was support you could not measure. There was something guiding you through moments that should have ended differently. And maybe you are still asking why. Why did it have to be that hard? Why did it take that much? Why did you have to go through things that felt like they were too much to carry? But what if those moments were not there to destroy you? What if they were there to reveal something in you that could not be seen any other way? Stay with me, because what you survived is not random, and what did not break you is not meaningless. There is something in your story that is still unfolding, and what you went through was part of what prepared you to stand where you are now. There are things you went through that no one fully understands, not because they do not care, but because they were not there when it happened. They did not feel what you felt. They did not carry what you carried. And because of that, part of your story has been lived in silence. You learned how to keep going without explaining everything. You learned how to show up even when something inside you felt completely drained. You smiled when you needed to. You stayed quiet when you had no energy to speak, and you carried weight that never had a name. That kind of pressure changes a person. It reshapes how you think, how you trust, how you respond to life. And sometimes it leaves you feeling like no one truly sees what you've been through, like your strength has been invisible, like your battles have gone unnoticed. But just because it was unseen does not mean it was not real. Every moment you chose to continue, even when it felt impossible, mattered. Every time you refused to give up, even when you had every reason to, left a mark that cannot be erased. There were moments when stopping would have been easier, moments when letting go would have made more sense than holding on. But something in you refused to disappear. Something in you kept standing, even when everything inside you felt like it was collapsing. You may not call that strength. You may not even recognize it as anything special, but it is. Because not everyone makes it through what you have been through. Not everyone keeps going when the weight becomes that heavy. And the fact that you are still here means that what you carried did not define your ending. It became part of your foundation. It became something that shaped you without destroying you. So do not look at your story and see only the pain. Look at it and recognize what it took for you to still be here, because that is not weakness. That is something far stronger than you have given yourself credit for. There were moments that should have ended you, not in a dramatic way that everyone could see, but in a quiet way that only you understood. Moments where something inside you almost gave up completely, where the weight was not just heavy, it was overwhelming. You reached points where continuing did not make sense, where you questioned if you had anything left to give, where even small things felt difficult. And in those moments, it was not about strength. It was about survival. You were not thinking about growth or purpose. You were just trying to get through the day, trying to hold yourself together enough to keep moving, even if you did not know where you were going. And somehow you did. That is what most people do not see. They see where you are now, but they do not see how close you came to breaking. They do not see how many times you had to rebuild yourself in silence, without help, without recognition. And maybe even now, you look back and wonder how you made it through, how you kept going when everything inside you was telling you to stop, how you did not completely fall apart. The truth is, there were moments you almost did. Moments where you felt like you could not carry anything else. But something held you in place. Something did not let you go all the way down. It may not have felt strong. It may not have felt clear. But it was there, in the smallest decisions, in the quiet choice to keep going one more day, in the refusal to completely give up, even when you felt like it. That is what carried you. Not perfection, not constant strength, but the fact that you did not disappear when it would have been easier to. And that matters more than you realize. There were moments when you thought everything was falling apart, but what you did not see was how much you were being held together. Not in obvious ways, not in ways that made everything easier, but in quiet ways that kept you from completely breaking. You thought you were alone in it. You thought you were carrying everything by yourself. But there were things that did not happen. Paths you did not go down. Outcomes that never reached you. And you may never fully know how much you were protected. Some things did not work out. And at the time, it felt like loss. It felt like disappointment, like something was taken from you. But looking back, there are moments you can now see differently. Things that did not happen that could have made everything worse. You were kept from situations that would have drained you further. You were redirected from places that would have broken you deeper. And even though it did not feel like protection at the time, it was. Protection does not always feel like relief. Sometimes it feels like delay. Sometimes it feels like confusion. Sometimes it feels like things not going the way you expected. But that does not mean it was not working in your favor. There were moments where if things had gone the way you wanted, you would not be where you are now. You would have walked into something you were not ready for, something that would have taken more from you than it gave. And even now, there are things you are being kept from that you do not understand yet. There are outcomes that will never reach you, not because you are missing out, but because you are being protected from what would have harmed you. So do not measure everything by what you lost or what did not happen. Some of those moments were not losses. They were quiet forms of protection that kept you standing when you did not even know you needed it. There were also things that changed inside you that you did not notice at first. Not loud changes, not obvious ones, but shifts that slowly reshaped how you see everything. And the truth is, what you went through did not just test you, it transformed you. You do not react the same way anymore. Things that once overwhelmed you do not have the same control over you. You may still feel the weight, but it does not define you the way it used to. That is not accidental. That is something that was built through everything you faced. You have learned how to stay when things are uncomfortable. You have learned how to move forward without needing everything to feel right. That kind of growth is not visible from the outside, but it changes everything about how you live. There are patterns you no longer fall into. There are situations you now recognize earlier. There are decisions you make differently because of what you have been through. That is what transformation looks like. It is not always loud, but it is real. And because it is internal, you may not give it the value it deserves. You may still focus on what has not changed yet, instead of seeing what already has. But what has changed within you is what will determine what happens next. Because what comes into your life will not just depend on timing. It will depend on who you are when it arrives. And right now, you are not the same person who once would have handled things differently. You have depth now. You have awareness. You have a kind of strength that does not come from easy moments, but from everything that tried to break you and did not succeed. So do not overlook what has already happened within you, because that is the part that will allow everything else to finally make sense. There were moments when it did not just feel hard. It felt like too much, like everything was coming at once, like there was no space to breathe, no time to recover, no way to step back and regain your strength. And in those moments, it did not feel like growth. It felt like you were being pushed beyond your limit. You questioned why it had to be that intense, why it came in waves instead of giving you time to process. Why, just as you were trying to stand again, something else would hit. It felt like there was no balance, like you were constantly trying to catch up with something you could not control. But pressure reveals something that comfort never can. It exposes what is fragile and what is real. It shows you what you depend on, what you hold on to, what you believe when everything else is stripped away. And that kind of exposure is not easy to face. There were parts of you that had to be confronted, ways of thinking that had to be challenged, expectations that had to be broken, not to harm you, but to remove what could not sustain you long term. Because what is weak cannot carry what is strong. In the middle of that pressure, it felt like you were losing something, like parts of you were being taken away. But what was being removed was not meant to stay. It was making space for something more solid, something that would not collapse under weight. That is why it felt so intense. Not because you were being destroyed, but because you were being refined. And refinement is never comfortable. It reshapes, it removes, it rebuilds in ways that are not always visible in the moment. You may not have understood it then. You may still be trying to make sense of it now. But that pressure was not random. It had a purpose. It was shaping you into someone who could stand in something greater without breaking. So do not look back at those moments and see only pain. Look at them and recognize what they produced in you, because that pressure did not end you, it prepared you. There came a point where something inside you started to shut down, not completely, not in a way that others could easily notice, but enough that you felt it. The excitement you once had was not the same. The expectation you carried began to fade. You were still moving, but without the same belief behind it. You did not stop your life. You kept going, doing what needed to be done, but something changed in how you felt. You stopped expecting things to get better. You stopped believing that something significant was about to happen. It was not that you gave up completely, but you pulled back. And that is the most dangerous place, not the pain, not the struggle, but that quiet withdrawal where you begin to protect yourself by lowering what you believe is possible, because it feels safer to expect less than to hope again and be disappointed. You may have told yourself you were just being realistic, that you were adjusting, that you were no longer going to expect too much. But what was really happening is that you were stepping away at the exact moment where something was about to shift. Because the final stage before change does not feel like progress. It feels like repetition. It feels like nothing new is happening, like you are doing the same things with no visible results. And that is what makes it so easy to disconnect. Most people do not fail at the beginning. They stop here. When it feels like nothing is working, when the energy is low, when the silence has lasted longer than expected, that is where they quietly step away. But if you are still here, even after feeling that, even after questioning everything, that means you did not fully disconnect. Something in you stayed. Something in you refused to completely let go. And that is the difference. Because right here, where most people stop, you are still standing. And that is where everything begins to change. There is something ahead of you that requires a version of you that did not exist before all of this. Not a stronger version in the way you used to think. Not louder, not more confident on the surface, but deeper, more grounded, more aware of what truly matters. You may have thought you were ready before. You may have believed that what you wanted could have come earlier. But if it had, you would have carried it the same way you carried everything else back then. And that version of you would not have been able to sustain it. What is coming is not just about receiving something. It is about being able to hold it without losing yourself, to stand in it without being overwhelmed, to grow within it without becoming unstable. And that requires a different kind of strength. That strength is not built in moments of ease. It is built here, in everything you had to face, in everything you had to carry, in everything that forced you to slow down, to think differently, to let go of what you thought you needed. You are being prepared for something that matches who you are becoming now, not who you were before. And that is why the process took longer than you expected, because it was not just about getting you there. It was about making sure you could remain there. There are things you once wanted that you would not even choose now. There are paths you thought were right that you now see differently. That shift did not happen by accident. It happened because of what you went through. And because of that, you are now able to recognize what is aligned and what is not. You are no longer driven only by urgency or emotion. You see with more clarity, even if everything around you still looks uncertain. So what is ahead of you is not random. It is connected to everything that changed within you. And when it arrives, it will not just feel right, it will match who you have become. Right now, the question is not what is coming next. It is how you stand in this moment before it arrives. Because the way you carry this phase will shape how you step into what is ahead. And this part is easy to overlook because it does not feel like progress. You can rush this moment, try to force clarity, try to move things before they are ready. Or you can begin to stand with a different kind of awareness, not passive, not disconnected, but steady, present, grounded in something deeper than what you see. This is where your foundation is tested, not by what you say you believe, but by how you continue when there is no confirmation, when there are no signs, no visible movement, no clear direction. This is where belief becomes real. You do not need to have everything figured out. You do not need to understand every detail. What matters is that you do not abandon what you know to be true just because it is not visible right now. Because truth does not change when circumstances are quiet. There is a difference between being stuck and being still. Being stuck means there is no movement at all. Being still means something is happening beneath the surface that has not reached visibility yet. And right now, you are not stuck. If you were stuck, nothing within you would be changing. But it is. The way you think, the way you respond, the way you see things is shifting. That is movement, even if it does not look like it from the outside. So stand here with intention, not as someone waiting for something to happen, but as someone who understands that something is already in motion, even if it has not reached you yet. Because how you stand now will determine how you move when everything begins to open. Something begins to settle inside you, not because everything has changed, but because you have. The same silence may still be there, the same unanswered questions, the same slow pace. But the way it affects you is no longer the same. It no longer controls your thoughts the way it used to. You are not reacting to every delay. You are not searching for constant signs. There is a calm that starts to take shape within you, not forced, not artificial, but real. It comes from a place deeper than emotion. It comes from alignment. You begin to understand that not everything needs to be explained immediately, that not every step has to be visible to be real. And that realization removes a weight you have been carrying without noticing. The need to control every outcome starts to loosen. There is a quiet confidence that grows even without external evidence. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady. You move through your day with a different posture, not because everything is resolved, but because something inside you has become stable. And this is where the shift truly begins. Not when things suddenly change around you, but when they no longer have the power to shake you the same way. When your peace is no longer dependent on what is happening externally. Many people miss this moment because they are still looking for visible results. But this is the result. This internal alignment is what allows everything else to follow in the right way at the right time. You are no longer ahead or behind. You are no longer trying to force what is not ready. You are exactly where you need to be. And from this place, what comes next will not feel chaotic. It will feel right. What is about to come into your life will not look exactly like what you once imagined. Not because your desire was wrong, but because your understanding was limited to what you knew back then. And now, after everything you have been through, you are no longer that same person. You asked for something specific, a certain outcome, a certain direction, a certain answer. But what is being prepared now is shaped by who you have become, not just by what you asked for, and that changes everything about how it will arrive. At first, it may not match the picture you had in your mind. It may not come in the way you expected, but when you look deeper, you will recognize something you could not see before, a sense of alignment, a sense of clarity, a sense that this fits you in a way nothing else did. That is the difference between something that looks right and something that is right. Before, you might have chosen based on urgency, emotion, or pressure. Now you are able to recognize what is stable, what is real, what will last. Nothing you went through was wasted. Every moment of confusion, every delay, every unanswered question was shaping your ability to see clearly when the time came. Without that process, you might have stepped into something that would not have held you. Now, you are different. You are not easily moved by what looks good on the surface. You are not pulled by the same things that once influenced your decisions. You have a deeper sense of what belongs in your life and what does not. So when things begin to move, do not rush them. Do not assume that speed is the goal. What matters now is not how fast something happens, but how aligned it is when it does. Because what is coming is not just change. It is something that matches the version of you that had to be built through everything you survived. Look at yourself for a moment, not at what is missing, not at what has not happened yet. Look at what is still here. After everything that tried to take you down, you are still standing, not perfect, not untouched, but not broken. There were moments that should have ended differently. Moments where the weight was too much, where the pressure was too intense, where the outcome could have gone another way, and yet you are still here. That is not something small. That is not something to overlook. You did not make it through because everything went right. You made it through because something did not allow you to be destroyed by what you faced. Something held you in place when you could not hold yourself. Something carried you when your own strength was not enough. You may have felt alone, but you were not left. You may have felt like everything was falling apart, but you did not fall with it. There was a limit to what you could endure on your own, and yet you were sustained beyond that limit. Think about what that means. The very things that should have broken you did not. The moments that should have ended you became part of your story instead, not to define your weakness, but to reveal your endurance. You are not who you were before this. You carry something different now. Not just experience, but depth. Not just memory, but strength that has been tested and proven in ways no one else may fully understand. So do not look at your life and say nothing happened. Do not look at your past and see only pain. Look at it and recognize what did not take you down, because that is the evidence that something greater was present, even when you could not see it. And now, standing here after everything, you are not at the end. You are at the point where everything you survived begins to make sense.